They say life can change in the blink of an eye. For Staff Sergeant Marcus Clay, a decorated Delta Force commander stationed out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that blink came with a single phone call. His identical twin brother, Malcolm, unarmed and on his way to pick up groceries, had been shot by police. One tragic mistake ignites a searing chain of events that spans from quiet suburban streets to covert military bases. In this story, loyalty and vengeance collide, hearts and minds are tested, and hidden truths come to light. Brace yourself for a journey into darkness, redemption, and the unpredictable hand of karma. Marcus Clay was accustomed to danger, but he'd always believed it came in uniform and bore foreign flags. As a member of the elite Delta Force America's top-tier Special Operations Unit, the only threats he acknowledged were those lurking in the shadows of overseas battlefields. He'd spent over a decade perfecting his skills, from expertly orchestrated raids in the deserts of the Middle East to clandestine nighttime missions in unfamiliar jungles. He had faced down terrorists and warlords, each more ruthless than the last. But none of those experiences compared to the dread he felt when he learned that his own twin brother, Malcolm, had been shot by police in his hometown of Greenville. Malcolm was not just any younger brother, he was Marcus's mirror image. Identical in face and form, they had chosen very different paths in life. While Marcus went military and soared through the ranks, Malcolm pursued the dream of becoming a chef. He owned a small, up-and-coming soul food restaurant named Southern Palate, located just a mile away from the city courthouse. His days were filled with the aromas of spices, the rattle of pans, and the hum of customers waiting eagerly for his signature gumbo. A far cry from the thunderous roar of helicopter blades and the crack of assault rifles that defined Marcus's world. Despite their differences, they shared a bond that was borderline telepathic. From an early age, they had communicated through subtle nods and glances. When they were children, they often pretended they had superpowers, imitation of the famed X-Men heroes. Over time, that playful connection matured into an unbreakable bond. No matter where Marcus was deployed, he always made time to call Malcolm. Whenever Malcolm stumbled upon some new recipe, Marcus was the first to hear about it. Their parents had always said these two halves of the Clay family were inseparable. That's why the phone call from an unknown number on a quiet Tuesday afternoon hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. He was on the tarmac at Pope Army Airfield, fresh off a training operation, when his phone buzzed. He picked it up, expecting the usual automated call or maybe a commanding officer. Instead, a trembling female voice whispered, "Is this Marcus Clay? Your brother Malcolm has been shot by the police. We need you here." Marcus tried to remain composed, but he felt the blood drain from his face. Within hours, he was on leave, on a plane, heading straight to Greenville. His mind raced, replaying worst-case scenarios. Had Malcolm died? Was he fighting for his life in a hospital? The only thing he knew was that his brother's fate hung by a thread. The moment Marcus stepped off the plane, the first thing he did was rush to Greenville General Hospital. The emergency ward was a flurry of activity nurses guiding patients, security guards eyeing visitors suspiciously. Marcus's heart thudded in his chest as he spotted a doctor in green scrubs stepping out of a side room labeled critical care. "Malcolm Clay?" Marcus panted. The doctor nodded gravely. "He's stable, but in a coma. We aren't sure how long he'll stay that way or if he'll wake." He was shot twice in the chest and once in the shoulder. Marcus's insides twisted. "Can I see him?" The doctor led him through squeaking doors and stark white hallways to a dimly lit room. There, hooked up to beeping monitors, lay Malcolm, his broad shoulders seemingly swallowed by hospital sheets, his eyes closed, bandages wrapped around his chest. Marcus swallowed, a lump forming in his throat. "Malcolm!" he whispered, gently squeezing his brother's hand. No response. Tears burned in Marcus's eyes, but he wouldn't let them fall. He couldn't. He was a soldier, emotions tucked away, neat and tidy. But this was different. This was his twin, the only family he had left after their parents passed away a few years prior. Outside, curiosity gnawed at him. How could this have happened? Malcolm had no criminal record. He was a mild-mannered chef. He hardly even drank. Marcus needed answers. A nurse pointed him toward the waiting area, where a civilian woman with tear-stained cheeks and a police officer stood side by side. The woman introduced herself as Jenny, a long-time customer at Southern Palate. She rattled off the events that she'd witnessed. He had just closed the restaurant and was heading to the convenience store. I saw him walk toward his car. Then police cars came screeching around the corner, lights going, sirens wailing. They surrounded him so fast. They yelled something at him, but he seemed confused, trying to figure out what was happening. Next thing I knew, shots. The officer, a stocky man with close-cropped hair, corrected her, stammering as he avoided eye contact with Marcus. "We've received a tip about an armed suspect matching Malcolm's description." The responding officers claimed he reached for his waistband. They believed he was drawing a weapon. Marcus's voice cracked with anger. "Malcolm doesn't own a gun. He never has." The officer offered a non-committal shrug. "It's an ongoing investigation." It sounded too neat, too rehearsed, and Marcus knew from personal experience how chaotic an actual confrontation could be. Tension flared in his gut. He realized that if something was being hidden, it might be big. As the days passed, Malcolm remained in a coma. Marcus spent his hours split between the hospital and the local police station, demanding a thorough explanation of what had happened. Everywhere he turned, he was met with stony silence or conflicting stories. There were never any body cam recordings available due to a technical glitch, they said. The police reports were vague, references to a furtive movement that had made the officers fear for their lives, but the bullets lodged in Malcolm's chest spoke their own truth. During a fruitless trip to the station, Marcus encountered Sergeant Tanya Reyes of the Internal Affairs Division. She was a sharp-eyed woman who seemed genuinely disturbed by the case. "I can't officially talk," she began hesitantly, "but something doesn't add up. I'm hearing rumors that the officers who fired those shots were part of a special tactical team, usually assigned to high-stakes raids, not the usual patrol who just respond to a vague tip." She slid a tiny USB drive into Marcus's hand, glancing around nervously. "Encrypted files. Rumor has it they were trying to ID a new narcotics operation. I can't stay if you want the truth. Follow the breadcrumbs. But be careful, these folks aren't playing around." Marcus nodded, heart pounding. He was used to dealing with dangerous men in foreign lands, but this was his hometown. For the first time he felt a piercing sense of betrayal. Who were these cops that had gunned down his brother? And why? Marcus spent the next week rummaging for information. With the help of a friend from the Army's intelligence support activity, someone who owed him a favor, he cracked open the files on the USB drive. What he found rattled him. A set of internal police memos mentioning an underground ring of corrupt officers, known colloquially as the River Brothers, a nod to Greenville's main waterway, the Redwater River. Allegedly, they had ties to local gangs, funneling drugs onto the streets in carefully managed deals that lined their pockets. Their operation was sophisticated, hidden behind layers of official approvals. One memo stood out. It referenced how these River Brothers were on high alert after a significant shipment had gone missing. They were looking for someone matching Malcolm's description, an African-American male in his early 30s, about 6 feet tall. They apparently believed he had inside information about the location of the drugs, or even the missing shipment itself. Marcus's mind spun. This had to be the reason they had targeted Malcolm. But Malcolm was entirely innocent. He was a chef who spent his nights perfecting collard greens and cornbread recipes. not running drugs. The resemblance to a suspect they were after was apparently enough for them to open fire first and ask questions later. And from the look of things, they might have tried to plant a weapon on him or twist the narrative to justify their actions. Anger simmered in Marcus's chest, threatening to erupt into a rage he rarely allowed himself to feel. He needed justice for his brother, but he also knew how quickly these situations could spiral. He'd seen corruption unravel entire communities overseas. Was his own hometown so broken that it would allow something like this? Still in uniform, still grieving, Marcus decided to speak publicly about the shooting. He called a press conference outside Greenville's City Hall, not far from the statue that commemorated the city's founding. Local news reporters gathered around. The story had gained traction: decorated war hero's twin brother shot by police. And sentiments were mixed between shock and righteous anger. One news outlet, WNCN, covered it extensively, airing interviews with some of Malcolm's employees at Southern Pallet. Marcus stood before the microphones, the glare of cameras in his face. My brother Malcolm Clay is a gentle soul. He was unarmed, had never been in trouble. I demand a thorough investigation, body cam footage, squad car dash cam footage, witness statements. I served this country for over a decade, risking my life in the name of justice. I will not stand by while that same injustice tries to bury my brother. A smattering of applause rose from members of the crowd, though it was quickly drowned by the tense atmosphere. City officials gave him side-eye glances, and a cluster of uniformed officers stood at the edge, arms folded. Among them, Marcus saw a few who wore the distinctive insignia of specialized units. He felt their stares like daggers. No one challenged him directly at that moment, but the message was clear. They were watching. Later that evening, Marcus tried to catch some rest at Malcolm's apartment. Surrounded by the warmth of his brother's possessions, family pictures on walls, stacks of recipe books, a shelf lined with jars of exotic spices, Marcus felt Malcolm's presence everywhere. Yet the emptiness weighed on him. Sleep was elusive, but exhaustion eventually won out. He woke up in the dead of night to an odd scratching noise at the front door. Instinctively, he reached for a sidearm he was authorized to carry while on leave, a relic from his days in specialized training. Silently, he crept toward the entrance. The door exploded open, revealing two masked intruders. They were armed, and the glint of their pistols caught the faint light from a nearby street lamp. Marcus didn't hesitate. Years of Delta Force training took over. He pivoted behind the couch, fired a quick shot into the first intruder's shoulder, and then expertly kicked the second's arm, disarming him. The second man stumbled, and with a swift elbow to the temple, Marcus knocked him unconscious. He quickly pinned the wounded intruder, who whimpered in pain. The intruder's mask slipped slightly, revealing a pale face with a harsh scar running along his jawline. Without fully removing the mask, Marcus pressed him. "Who sent you?" A desperate sneer twisted the man's lips. He spat at Marcus. "You don't know what you've walked into." The River brothers don't let anyone squeal. Marcus's heart pounded. So it was true. The corruption snaked deeper than he feared. Before he could ask anything else, the intruder snarled, "You think being a hero overseas protects you? We run this town." He lunged, and Marcus reflexively struck him across the head, knocking him out cold. Marcus called the police to report the break-in, but the responding officers arrived suspiciously late. Their thinly veiled hostility made Marcus's skin crawl. They promised they'd look into the incident, but Marcus knew better. If the River brothers had infiltrated the police force so thoroughly, the official channels might be compromised. Marcus needed someone on the inside, someone who knew the seedy underbelly without wearing a badge. And that's how he stumbled upon Lorenzo Lowe Bishop, a reformed ex-gang member turned community activist. Lowe was a fixture in the neighborhood, known for organizing youth outreach programs and trying to steer kids away from the path he once walked. Marcus approached him one afternoon at a local park where Lowe was overseeing a pickup basketball game for teens. He waited for the kids to clear out before revealing what he had discovered about the River Brothers. Lowe's eyes darkened, the scars of the street life flickering across his face. "Man, I've heard rumors for years," Lowe admitted, "but nobody wants to talk. If you cross them, they'll come for your family. That's why everyone keeps their heads down. They've got half the city in their pocket." Lowe told Marcus about secret drop points near the old Greenville shipping docks, abandoned warehouses where drug deals supposedly went down under the police's covert supervision. The missing shipment that set them off? It belonged to one of the local cartels, and the River Brothers were under massive pressure to recover it or find the culprit. By all appearances, they latched onto Malcolm as a scapegoat in their desperate attempt to crack the case. Marcus's anger flared as he listened to Lowe. "I'll burn this entire operation to the ground if I have to," he said, his voice quiet but trembling with resolve. "They put my brother in a coma. They tried to kill me in his apartment. I'm not letting them get away with it." Lowe nodded slowly. "You'll need proof. Real evidence. Something that makes it impossible to deny. And you'll need to be prepared for what happens after. They don't go down without a fight." Marcus decided to fight back the only way he knew how, with precision. He had an old contact in Delta Force Intelligence, code name Hawkeye, who specialized in setting up stealth recording devices and satellite feeds for remote ops. With Hawkeye's discreet assistance, Marcus planned to catch the River Brothers in the act. Together, Marcus and Lowe identified one of the suspected drop points, Warehouse 17, at the Redwater shipping docks, a dilapidated building rumored to be the site of major drug transactions. Marcus carefully installed hidden cameras and microphones in vantage points that overlooked the main floor. Everything was rigged to stream to a secure server that Hawkeye had set up. Days turned into a week. Tension running high. Marcus spent each night holed up in a safe motel with multiple escape routes, worried the River Brothers might track him down again. He visited Malcolm when he could, hearing the same monotone beeps of hospital equipment. His twin still lay unresponsive, each minute away from him, fueling Marcus's determination to bring those responsible to justice. Finally, after days of waiting, movement appeared on the cameras. Late one evening, black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up. Men in dark clothing stepped out, one of them wearing a police badge that glimmered under the dull floodlights. Marcus recognized him from news articles. Lieutenant Sebastian Mills, a decorated cop, praised for heroic deeds on the force. The same man had been suspiciously absent from the station since the shooting. He now seemed to be orchestrating a drug deal, with stacks of cash changing hands and duffel bags being loaded with suspicious cargo. Marcus watched every second of the transaction on his encrypted laptop feed, heart pounding. He zoomed in on Lieutenant Mills's face as he barked orders to subordinates. It was all their conclusive proof. These so-called guardians of the law were not only deep in corruption, but also heavily armed and methodical in their dealings. Armed with this evidence, Marcus believed it would be a straightforward path to justice. He would contact Sergeant Tanya Reyes in Internal Affairs, provide the recordings, and see the entire corrupt ring dismantled. But the moment he arranged a meet-up and handed over the data, a chilling reality unfolded. Sergeant Reyes didn't show up. Instead, a group of armed men in tactical gear arrived, bearing no police insignias, their faces obscured. Marcus realized with a jolt that Tanya might have been compromised or worse, forced to set him up. Fleeing the scene under a hail of bullets, he managed to escape thanks to a carefully planned route and the situational awareness hammered into him by his Delta Force training. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as each shot fired hammered home the reality. This was no longer a game of cat and mouse. It was open season on him. Marcus found shelter in the back of a friend's barbershop, a place closed for the night, but whose proprietor owed Marcus a favor for helping his son enroll in a military college years back. Shaking, adrenaline spiking, Marcus replayed the setup. He had lost control of the evidence. What if these operatives destroyed it? He needed to confirm that Hawkeye still had the backup. Otherwise, everything he had risked would be for nothing. It turned out Hawkeye had done exactly what any good intelligence operative would: set up multiple backups. Not only did he store the footage on a secure server, but he also placed it in a cloud-based system under multiple aliases. All was not lost. Marcus arranged a clandestine meeting with a federal contact at the local FBI field office, a friend of a friend who had once coordinated anti-terror operations with Delta Force. The FBI contact, Special Agent Maurice Brent, was initially skeptical. Yet when he saw the raw footage of Lieutenant Mills orchestrating the drug deal, his eyes widened. "You're telling me the entire station is compromised?" Marcus nodded grimly. "Enough to pull off a cover-up shooting on my brother. This ring is well connected. They nearly ambushed me last night." Agent Brent exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "That's explosive, Sergeant Clay. I'm going to need to loop in my superiors immediately." For the first time, Marcus felt hope that the tide was turning. He entrusted the footage to the FBI in a secured manner, forging a chain of custody that no local police corruption could tamper with. Agent Brent worked fast. Within days, a coordinated federal sting operation was planned to take down the River Brothers. Marcus was told to keep a low profile. Federal teams in unmarked vehicles moved silently through Greenville, setting up for simultaneous raids on multiple targets: the police station's specialized units, the known safe houses, the shipping docks. The operation was poised to go off at dawn. Marcus, who had insisted on being present, even if just as an observer, waited in a safe vantage point. His mind wandered to Malcolm, still lying in the hospital. He prayed the next time he saw his brother, it would be with good news. When the clock struck the designated hour, a wave of federal agents descended upon Greenville in choreographed unison. From his viewpoint near the station's side entrance, Marcus watched black SUVs screech to a halt. FBI agents swarmed out, bulletproof vests stamped FBI, weapons raised. Shouts echoed in the crisp morning air. FBI on the ground. Across town, at the shipping docks, a second team confronted men loading crates into a cargo truck. Lieutenant Mills was there, caught red-handed. Faced with overwhelming force, he tried to flee but was tackled by an agent after a short foot chase. The arrests were swift and numerous. Evidence seized from the station's secured lockers revealed the breadth of the operation. Newspaper headlines the next day proclaimed, FBI crackdown on police corruption in Greenville, multiple officers arrested for drug trafficking. In the wake of these raids, Malcolm's case took center stage. Public outcry grew louder. The same city officials who had sidestepped earlier questions now stood on podiums, promising full transparency. Charges were filed against the officers directly involved in Malcolm's shooting. Statements from the River Brothers' lesser associates, cutting deals, confirmed Malcolm's innocence and revealed that the cops had planned to plant evidence on him if he survived. But life has a way of meting out ironic justice. Lieutenant Mills, the very man who led the deadly operation, suffered a violent ambush in prison by a group who once did dirty work for him. He survived, but faced life-threatening injuries, effectively experiencing a version of the terror he had inflicted on innocents. Other corrupt officers found themselves socially ostracized, some placed in protective custody after receiving threats from former gang partners. The city itself reeled from the scandal, facing lawsuits, public demonstrations, and calls for an overhaul of the entire police force. It took another 3 weeks for Malcolm to open his eyes. Marcus was at his bedside, dozing uncomfortably in a plastic chair, when Malcolm's fingers twitched. Slowly, his eyelids fluttered, revealing hazy, confused eyes. "Marcus!" he croaked, voice weak. "What? What happened?" Relief washed over Marcus. He had replayed this moment countless times in his dreams, never sure if it would actually come. "You're safe," Marcus murmured, smiling through tears. "They shot you, but you pulled through. Don't worry about anything right now. You're safe. Justice is on the way." Tears stained Malcolm's cheeks as the reality of the situation sank in. "Why?" he whispered. "I was just closing the restaurant." Marcus took his hand. "I know they made a terrible mistake, part of something bigger. But we're clearing your name, and they're paying for what they did." In the weeks that followed, Malcolm's slow recovery became a symbol of hope for the community, a testament that even when corrupted power tries to crush innocence, righteousness can and should prevail. Marcus stayed by his side, ensuring that the physical therapy bills were covered and that Malcolm had the emotional support he needed. The community rallied, raising funds for Malcolm's medical costs and offering heartfelt messages of support, many praising Marcus for risking his life again, this time at home. The city of Greenville faced a reckoning. The FBI's investigation led to sweeping reforms in the police department. City Council, once reticent, began working with citizen groups and outside experts to restore trust. Sergeant Tanya Rise, who had been coerced into that ill-fated setup but eventually helped the feds gather more evidence, received a plea deal, losing her badge but avoiding prison time. She gave a tearful statement, apologizing for her complicity. "I was scared. We all were. But that doesn't excuse it. Malcolm Clay deserved better. His family deserved better. Our city deserved better." While far from perfect, the changes sparked by the scandal set Greenville on a path to re-examining its law enforcement culture. Recruiting processes were overhauled, community oversight boards established, and citizens stepped forward to shape the direction of public safety. Local activists, including Lowe, found renewed support, and violence rates in some neighborhoods began to wane. In the quiet aftermath, Marcus and Malcolm stood together in the sunlight outside Southern Palette, the restaurant's neon sign humming gently against the midday sky. The bullet holes in Malcolm's chest were replaced by scars that ached when the weather turned cold. However, he was learning to accept them, signs of survival and reminders of life's fragility. Marcus spoke softly. "I've put in for a reassignment. I'll still be in the army, but stateside. I want to be closer to you, Malcolm. I can't be halfway around the world while you're still healing." Malcolm nodded, fighting back tears. "You've always been my protector. Even when we were kids, you'd stand up to bullies for me." They hugged, the kind of embrace that can only be shared between two halves of the same soul. Around them, passers-by offered nods of admiration, aware of their story, how Malcolm's tragedy sparked a massive revelation that brought the city's darkest secrets into the light. One last twist came when Marcus received a letter from an unknown sender. Postmarked from a federal prison, it carried a single line, "Sometimes the wheel turns in ways we don't expect. Watch your back." The signature was from one of the mid-level River brothers, who had managed to evade capture during the raids, eventually caught a state over. The letter was both ominous and oddly resigned, as though it acknowledged that justice had finally caught up to them. Marcus felt the old tension coil in his gut as he read that line. The mission might be over for now, but the fight against corruption was never truly done. He folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. He would remain vigilant, but he refused to let fear consume him or overshadow the victories they had fought so hard to achieve. Months later, Malcolm stood in his newly renovated restaurant, smiling at the throng of customers who had come to celebrate his grand reopening. The menu included a new item, an homage to his brother, a dish called Guardian Stew, blending hearty vegetables and spices from across the globe, just as Marcus's deployments had taken him across many countries. Profits from the dish would fund a scholarship for kids in the neighborhood who dreamed of culinary school or public service. Meanwhile, Marcus embarked on a new role with the army, offering specialized training to local law enforcement agencies, sharing the lessons he'd learned, painfully so, about integrity, community engagement, and the cost of looking the other way. His training sessions became legendary, filled with real-world anecdotes that commanded respect from even the most cynical cops. Though a long road lay ahead for Greenville, it was no longer shrouded in the darkness of corruption. Through heartbreak, near-death encounters, and the persistent pursuit of justice, one thing stood clear: sometimes the courage to stand up for what's right, even against those you've been taught to trust, can spark a chain reaction that changes everything. Thank you for watching and listening to the story of Marcus Clay and Malcolm, two brothers who refused to let darkness claim their future. Their unwavering bond and fierce determination for justice unleashed a wave of change that rocked an entire city. From covert scheming in abandoned warehouses to the dramatic FBI raids that brought corrupt officers to their knees, this story reminds us that truth can come from the most unexpected places. Most importantly, it shows that real heroes aren't only on distant battlefields. Sometimes they're standing right beside us, protecting home and heart. If this story moved you, please hit the like button. Share it with someone who loves a good drama filled with courage and karma, and subscribe to our channel for more engaging stories. Your support helps us continue bringing these tales to life. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay hopeful, and remember that justice can prevail when we stand together.